For the benefit of Mr. Kite and the Beatles, there will be a video tonight, today, whenever it is you're watching, to explain one of the Beatles' most outlandish, whimsical, and revolutionary songs to hit the airwaves. A song that thoroughly transports its listeners to a circus far, far away. This is a story of being for the benefit of Mr. Kite. Characters, characters, characters. One thing so many of us love in music is the storytelling, particularly when we get to follow a compelling character. The Beatles had loads of them: Eleanor Rigby, Nowhere Man, Rocky Raccoon, and now we journey into the enchanting circus of Mr. Kite. But here's the twist. Mr. Kite was a real person. The circus was a real event, and John Lennon, while filming the promotional video for Strawberry Fields, serendipitously finds himself in an old antique shop near their hotel. John says, "The whole thing is from a Victorian poster, which I bought in a junk shop. It is so cosmically beautiful. It's a poster for a fair that must have happened in the 1800s. Everything in the song is from that poster, except the horse wasn't called Henry. Now, there were all kinds of stories about Henry the horse being heroin. I had never seen heroin in that period. No, it's all just from that poster. The song is pure, like a painting, a pure watercolor." William Kite, son of circus owner James Kite, is believed to have worked at Pablo Fanca's fair around 1845. And as a side note, Fanca was Britain's first black circus owner. Pretty cool. So John buys the poster and brings it back to his home in Weybridge and allows the poster to influence his lyrics, changing some things here and there and everywhere. Like Xanthus the horse became Henry. Instead of the circus going to Rochdale, it went to Bishopsgate. I suppose John felt those words probably had a better flow to them. However, John Lennon has always been forthright with his difficulties with insecurity and sometimes just having trouble getting work done. He says, "I wrote that as a pure poetic job, to write a song sitting there. I had to write it because it was time to write, and I had to write it quick because otherwise I wouldn't have been on the album. So I had to knock off a few songs. I knocked off A Day in the Life or my section of it, and whatever we were talking about, Mr. Kite or something like that. I was very paranoid in those days. I could hardly move." But even though John gets the majority of the credit for writing Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, did you know Paul McCartney actually wrote it with John? And at the time of Sgt. Pepper's, this was one of the increasingly fewer songs that was an actual collaboration between the Lennon-McCartney duo. Paul reminisces about the song just as recently as 2013 when he decided to perform Mr. Kite live. Some critics said it was strange because that's a John song, but Paul maintains they are wrong. Paul says, "Mr. Kite is such a crazy, oddball song that I thought it would freshen up the set. Plus the fact that I had never done it. None of us in the Beatles had ever done that song in concert. And I have great memories of writing it with John. I read occasionally people say, 'Oh, John wrote that one.' I say, wait a minute. What was that afternoon I spent with him then, looking at this poster? He happened to have a poster in the living room at his home. I was at his house, and we just got this idea, because the poster said Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. Of course, then it had Henry the Horse Dances the Waltz, you know, whatever. The Hendersons, Pablo Fanca's Fair, Somerset's. We said, what was Somerset's? It must have been an old-fashioned way of saying somersaults. The song just wrote itself. So yeah, I was happy to kind of reclaim it as partially mine." Historically, Paul never seemed to have any trouble being honest with who wrote what. So I'm going to go ahead and assume he's telling the truth and John and Paul wrote the song together. Now, as we all know, this is not a song one can just simply cover well on an acoustic guitar. Believe me, I've tried and failed. Even with a band, because the charm of this song, the way it transports us to the circus with all its merry characters, horses, and trampolines, is the mix. And that requires masterful production. Enter the one and only George Martin. And before I quote him, listen to the way he chooses his words. I don't think he's insulting John. I think he's expressing the magic of working with an artist like John Lennon. George Martin says, "In terms of asking me for particular interpretations, John was the least articulate. He would deal in moods. He would deal in colors, almost. And he would never be specific about what instrument or what line I had. I would do that myself. John was more likely to say, as in the case of Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, it's a fairground sequence. I want to be in that circus atmosphere. I want to smell the sawdust when I hear that song. So it was up to me to provide that. And in my opinion, he did. So I say turn on Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, listen to it, and ask yourself, do I feel transported? Can I smell the sawdust of the circus? If you enjoy these videos and want to support the channel, please consider becoming a patron. My videos will always be free, and this is a great way to help me make them better for you. Check out my debut album, The HollyHobs, on Spotify and Apple Music, and click the like button, subscribe, and notification bell because that is the best way to get notified when a new video is released. See you next time.